First of all, when I saw the trailer for Transatlantic, um, I always joke I have no personal style, but I love costumes. And the when I saw the trailer for Transatlantic, the whole time I was like, costumes, costume. I just kept saying it out loud. I was just so bowled over by the colors and the it's so beautiful. So I'm just gonna gush at you for 15 minutes. Anyway,
Thank you. Thank you. That's really kind of you to say.
it's I wanted to know about uh the scale of this, just because there's something that I notice in the costuming. The costuming, obviously, it's a period piece. We're in Europe. There's a bigness that I kept feeling the whole time I watched the show, and I wanted to know, something like Unorthodox is very intimate, which I love the costuming on that too. But it was I was just kind of curious if you could tell me, like, what was the most exciting thing about the bigness, what was the most daunting thing about it. I was just so impressed by the scale.
Um, it was a big show, and of course, when you're doing when you're doing a period piece, it's always fantastic because you can research it and you can really get into it, and then you can put your own spin on your characters and the character
Mhm.
development as you see them, and you work with, of course, the writers, the showrunner, the director, and then the actor about how we want to present that character. Um, and I was very lucky that all my actors were really, really collaborative, and they were all doing their own massive research as well. So we could bounce off each other a little bit, and that was a lovely way to start the relationship,
Mhm.
because we could just really talk to each other about which bits we'd found out, and then, Gillian Jacobs would go, but I found out that this, and I found out this, and I'd go, but I found out this, and it was the same with Varian's character, Corey Michael Smith's character, Varian Fry. But it was a huge show. So how I started it was before we even had our cast. My assistant designer and I went to Paris, and we hit all the big costume houses there, and we were pulling at the same time as the Dior. I think I'm not sure if it's a television show or film, but it's exactly a very similar time period to us.
Okay.
And there were two of us, and there were seven of them, and we're like trying to pull all the bits that we liked. So how I work
Oh
it
my
is that
God.
I have a real sense in my brain of how I want certain characters to be, and then I will pull as much as I can that represents that. And then I'll pull lots and lots of stuff for all the background and for the smaller characters. And I'll just pull things that I think are beautiful. And then I have to spend a lot of time. Of course, they all get traveled down. And then I have
Mhm.
to spend a lot of time with each rack and then pull out the treasure pieces that I think will work for the characters. And then I separate them all out, and I have racks and racks and racks with all the names on. And this is even before I know who's possibly even playing that
Oh,
character.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it's really an intuitive thing about creating the look of the character from the written
Mm.
word. And then, of course, the actor arrives, and then we can start the dialogue and, start the discussions.
Mm.
But I think we spent about 6 weeks doing all the costume houses in Paris. We also had to pull from some in Madrid because there were a couple of shows going at the same time. Then we were pulling the same things, as I said, with the Dior one, but also the Bardot show was also being pulled at the same time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then I really love secondhand clothes, and I love
Hmm.
real vintage. So we hit all the vintage markets as well. And Paris pre-Christmas is cold and rainy and busy.
Yeah. Gosh.
And so that's what we did. And we hit all the markets. And what I really love about that time is that money was tight. Obviously, the war was there, things were difficult, but people still sort of wanted to dress up and look elegant and show who they were through their clothing.
Hmm.
And how they did that was they added accessories. So
Mm,
whether it was
okay.
some crazy hat or some beautiful glove or an amazing brooch or some fantastic glasses. So I made sure that I pulled lots of really interesting pieces like that for me to play with once I started with my characters. Um,
Hmm.
so it was big and it took a lot of
Yeah.
research. And we had a fantastic space and it was just jammed full of clothing. And then, so what I do is I pull all the pieces out for my main cast, and then I leave all the other pieces for the background dressers to do my background, which
Mm.
of course consisted of, whether it was the bank manager or the refugees or, whoever we had, all the beautiful people at the cafes and the
Mhm.
restaurants, and all of those people also have to be dressed from head to toe. And even though they're not
Wow.
characters per se, they are my background artists, and I consider them to be very, very important in creating the style
Oh
and the vibe
yeah.
of the show.
Yeah, they really help envelop the world. I feel like there's a lot of stuff in here that I would want for myself, but I found myself, looking beyond maybe like a principal actor's like shoulder, looking at somebody sitting down at the cafe. It's just every single thing from, top of the call sheet down. It's just like everyone was just so um character driven, costume wise. It was just so great. Um
Mm.
if I could just sometimes with shows that have such big costumes or like amount of costumes, if I could maybe just ask about some specific characters, if that's okay.
Sure, of
Um,
course.
I want to talk about Gillian Jacobs first, just because I love that her outfits really run the gamut of color. She's a character who's, getting a lot of money from her dad. And I can show you, like, I normally when I talk to customers, I just sort of write down outfits. It's just out pages of just like writing stuff down of stuff I want, and I can't possibly ask about everything, but obviously, but I think in the first episode, like just in terms of different coloring and stuff like that, yellow dress she's in at the very beginning when she gives the yellow dress to somebody else, that's a really striking dress. And then even I think it's the when she goes to an office to ask for something and it's like black and white with like pink lip, with the hat. Oh my god, I was obsessed with that. I just with a character that has so much, like, she has the means and she obviously likes to wear flashy things. Like, where do you kind of start with that? How do you like pare that down to make that cohesive?
Well, with Mary Jane Gold, because she's a real person and she
Mm-hmm.
was a real heiress,
Mm-hmm.
and she had written a biography. So both Gillian Jacobs and I had read and extracted pieces out of the biography, and it turned out that her favorite designer was Schiaparelli.
Okay.
Um, so hence the lips, and
Mm-hmm.
so I decided that all of her clothes, when she wasn't sort of being an active spy, all of her clothes that were her beautiful clothes were, they were couture. They were from Paris. She'd been living in Paris. She loved, she went and bought the top of the range. She probably went to the fashion shows
Yeah.
and bought straight off the catwalk. So that's where I started in my little brain. It's like, okay, if she could have whatever she had, what would be her favorite pieces? And because this is, as Anna Winger sort of put it, it's a screwball comedy, but it's based in a really terrible time. But these passionate, wonderful, brave people still have their personalities shining
Yeah.
through, even though they're actually really trying to save a lot of other people that strangers they don't know.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to have the passion and the delight of her character shine through, and the playfulness of her character. And that's why I chose the lip. I mean, Schiaparelli did have a beautiful suit that had lips on it, but of course it's in a museum somewhere. So
Mm-hmm.
that's my rendition of it. We had some
I love
wonderful milliners.
that. Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I actually bought the base of the suit in the flea market in Paris, and then because Gillian's a
Oh.
very petite actress, of course, we had to cut it up and recreate it to fit her. And then I had the lips made embroidered in Marseille, and we had these fabulous milliners, and I showed them what I was going to do, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think Schiaparelli's hat would look like if she was making a suit like this and a hat? And they came back with this crazy, fabulous. I mean, I said I wanted to be pink and black, and then they did the layer thing, and then they added the lips, and they were so wonderful. They made all the hats that I asked for, including the blue one that was with the yellow dress, which the idea behind that yellow dress is that it's the first time we see her. I played a lot with the idea that, you know, she calls herself the Bank. Her name is Mary Jane Gold. So I played quite a lot with gold as a visual trigger for her wealth. So that's why that dress, the first time we see her, she's kind of this splash of sunshine and gold as she walks through the piazza. And the hat that she's wearing, it was one of the first sort of travel hats. So it was a crushable hat that could then pop open. I mean, ours didn't really do it, but that's what it was advertised as when I saw it in my research, was this the perfect hat for traveling because it won't get squashed and ruined. So I had chosen to recreate that hat for her to go with the yellow dress, which of course then she gives away. And the other actress was a lot bigger than Gillian Jacobs, so we had to make, you know, another 5 dresses for this other actress to then, you know, jump in the water, go on her big trek over the Pyrenees. And so that dress had to be incrementally broken down or aged as it went through it. So we ended up having like 6. I think we had 6 dresses.
Okay. Yeah, the burst of sunshine that you say, that was so, I think the costuming really helps there, because it's just like I love Gillian Jacobs, and I'm always so drawn to her, but when I saw her in that first scene and I, you know, just learning who she is, and that dress made me really think. I was like, I want to know everything about her, why she just looks so beautiful in it, and the fact that she gives it away, it was just made me. I was like, all right, I'm in. Like, I had no idea what the story was about or anything, so I was just like, all right. So I feel like the costuming, especially in that very beginning sequence, I was just like, all right, let's see where this goes.
I love that.
Yeah, it's just sort of like, and the fact that that beautiful dress, that she just like gives it away. I was like, who is this woman? I need to know what she's all about.
Well, she was notoriously exceptionally generous, I think, with she just was like, she sold her aeroplane. She really had an aeroplane, and she sold it and put the money towards the ERC, the Emergency Rescue Committee. And she really just gave her money away to help people out. She was, a very unique rich person.
Imagine. You mentioned Varian Fry, who I didn't know who he was before I started watching this. Corey Michael Smith. He's, you know, that tall, slender, like kind of guy who can sort of just make a suit look really good. There's something about the men who have, I don't know what it's called, but I think it's probably just called a tie pin, the way it goes through the tie. I love that. I love that detail. Just for a character who, you know, has to, you know, he's, you know, doing his job, what he's doing, but he's also a, you know, a man who has a secret. I wanted to know, like, what kind of detailing you wanted to sort of include with that buttoned upness. You know, he's I can't talk. It's just sort of like he's not revealing his true self to the world, and I sort of wanted to know how you wanted to reflect that in the costume, because he looks so handsome in everything. Like, every time he walked on screen, I was like, I want that suit. He just looks so good. Yeah.
Well, he of course, Corey Michael Smith is an exceptionally beautiful, handsome man, both inside and out. And he has a very, very easy body to dress because he's naturally that shape. And what you have to think of in that time for fashion, it's like, well, what were they drawing on? What were the designers of that time drawing on, or the tailors drawing upon? And And really, it was the cut of Superman. It was the
Mm.
big shoulders, the thin waist, the long, elegant pant. And so, even though I didn't want Varian Fry to look like that, because he didn't, and I could see actual pictures of what Varian looked like,
Mm.
I noticed that he was very pedantic in the way he dressed. It was very neat. It was beautifully put together. And in his autobiography, he actually even talks about what he packed in his suitcase to go to.
Oh.
And he says that he's a Brooks Brothers man. And Brooks
Okay.
Brothers to me is, it's not top end, but it's certainly not cheap.
Mm.
It's well made. It's going to last a lifetime. It's sensible clothing, but it's nicely cut. And what I think always looks really nice in camera is if you have a suit and then you tailor it to the body. So every single suit in my show was tailored, whether it was an extra or our
Oh, wow.
our Varian Fry, everything was tailored to fit so that I could scoop it in at the waist. I
Mm.
had, the sleeve. If the sleeves were a bit too wide, I took all the arms in, because I think a slim sleeve is also very elegant. And
Mm.
so I have certain quirks that make suits to me look more beautiful. And I think that Varian Corey just carried them so perfectly. And we tweaked everything that we did. Some of his are original,
Mm.
some of them are reproduction, and some of them we made. But every single one is hand nipped and tucked by me and my tailors.
That's why he looks so good. It's just tailored to perfection. I don't know.
Well, I mean, he's a beautiful guy.
Yeah, he's a very, like, I had forgotten I had seen him in a movie set in like the 80s where he played an out gay man, and I had forgotten. I was like, who is this? I was like, who's this gorgeous man? And then I was like, oh my God, there's something about him that the suits made him, so maybe it's also the glasses made him also a little unrecognizable to me. It's just, when a man can wear a suit like that, it's honestly very I don't know. It's
Sexy.
yeah. It's like, yeah. Like, I almost said that. I was like, but it's just like, I don't know. If a man can wear like a suit like that, it's very alluring.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think some, like, guys and costuming for men doesn't always get the credit it deserves in terms of that. Um, okay. The last character I wanted to ask about, because I was a little obsessed with him, also because I'm a little in love with Amit, but the character of Thomas.
Hmm.
Um, I loved how, I don't know, one scene he'd be wearing a sweater vest, and the next scene he would be wearing, like, high-waisted trousers with like a loose tie. He reminded me a little bit of an old Hollywood movie star that I can't even place it. There's a couple of looks even where I was like, he's giving me Anthony Perkins. There's something about him that his costuming, in a different way than Varian Fry, was also very sexy because he's owning it almost. And I like the colors he wears, like, yellows and stuff like that. Tell me about him, because you couldn't be any different than Varian Fry, even though they're
Well, that's what I wanted to show, was that Thomas Lovegrove is comfortable with his sexuality, and
mm,
people are dying all around them. Europe is not what it used to be, and it's almost like, we might be dead tomorrow. Why not
mm,
just make hay while the sun shines? And I wanted his character to also be complementary of Mary Jane's attitude. And
yeah,
so she was all out and generous and doing it. And I wanted Thomas to be the same. And I did also want that juxtaposition between Varian Fry and Thomas Lovegrove. And so I made his world much more colorful, much more not camp. It wasn't camp at all, but it had an elegance that was a little bit over the top, and I wanted it to play with
yeah.
that.
It's
And
playful.
yes,
There's a flair. Yeah.
I
Sorry.
gave him, beautiful linen. We made linen pants for him, and we did them very high-waisted.
Mm,
And I chose much more fun fabrics for his clothing.
mm,
Um, I even put him in a cream suit with a green pinstripe at one
Oh, I
point.
loved that. That was so great. Oh.
And yeah, and we could really play with him. So, and Amit is a very he's such a fabulous actor because he obviously played Estee's husband, Yankee, in Unorthodox.
I could not believe that. When I realized that that was him, I was like, what is going
Yeah,
on? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's really wonderful for a costume designer to be able to work with an actor and go from that character of Yankee to the Thomas Lovegrove, and just he in the fitting he was just like, yeah, I just love it, and he kept taking photographs and sending it to his friends, and
Oh, wow.
he was so much fun to work with, and we really played with his clothing, and
Mm-hmm.
but I also wanted to make sure that he looked really rich as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I wanted that sort of soft elegance. I wanted everything to look expensive, but have a sort of a crumpled softness about it. But then he'd have like these really fabulous church's shoes on, or and so he was delightful to dress, and as you say, much more colorful. And so when you see the sort of structure of Varian Fry next to the
Mm-hmm.
sensuality of Thomas Lovegrove, you can kind of see why they work. And likewise, when we went to the party and we have all of those crazy, fabulous, surrealist artists just showing their true colors through a
Mm-hmm.
costume, you know, Varian Fry took his jacket off, and that's all. That's all I was going
Yeah.
to ever do for him. I was like, no, I'm sorry, you don't get dressed up. You take your jacket off.
Oh, yeah, there's
Whereas,
a lot. Oh, I'm sorry.
no, sorry. Whereas Thomas, you know, has paints those eyes, which is a very surrealist look on his eyelids. And then I used the eyes of a peacock feather and made his bow tie out of that.
Uh,
So yeah, it was fun.
I'm a sucker for a bow tie, so I was in love with the party scene. It was just like I don't know, there was like a lot of his costumes reminded me, maybe it was anytime he had like an open vest on, where it's sort of like the party's not over, he's just getting a little bit more comfortable to have a little bit more fun. That's what he
Yeah.
reminded me of a lot. um
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the party just because the funny thing was my husband was sitting on the couch when we were watching that episode, and I had gotten up to, I think, get a drink or something, and he just started yelling. He's like, glove dress, glove dress. You have to ask her about the glove dress. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I didn't realize where that episode was going. And I don't know, that is like a smorgasbord of delights, that whole sequence. I mean, was anything off limits for that? Like creating all of those amazing, like homemade uh outfits. Like, did you guys have like a craft corner and you guys built everything? I was in love with that. That whole party sequence was great.
Yeah, that party sequence was what I would call my money shot.
Oh,
Um,
so good.
and you know, you're doing your filming, and the actors are coming in and they're being cast, and this is going to be this person. And so I had a rack of party stuff that I wanted to use, but I also really wanted to make sure that within that villa, the idea was that they'd found things
Mm-hmm.
to create their costumes with. And so Max Ernst, who is, if you know anything about Max Ernst and the
Mm-hmm.
surrealist movement, he was obsessed with a lock bird, and he'd often wear this like weird headdress in real life with like these crazy sort of feathers all over him.
Mm-hmm.
That was the direction I went for him and Peggy Guggenheim. And I had asked Anna if we could put in, I knew they were going to have chickens for dinner because they had 2 chickens in the garden when everyone arrives. I don't know if you noticed that. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, please, can we see the chef, the cook, plucking the feathers so that I can then justify using those feathers to create a costume,
Mm-hmm.
which was, you know, the feathers on her crown, the forks in the crown, which was to sort of symbolize the fact that there was very little food available to people in World War II. And there was lots of booze, though. They sort of
Yeah.
lived on booze. Um, And then, yeah, just playing with the feathers. And then, of course, the things that surrealists, they have certain iconic images that they use a lot of. So it's to do with the unconscious mind, with dreams, with eroticism, and they use eyes and hands and gloves and time, all sorts of things that Salvador Dali and Andre Breton, or the main guys, Max Ernst, were all playing with in their art. So I wanted to draw a line of each character playing with something. And for Gillian Jacobs' character, Mary Jane Gold, Schiaparelli and Salvador Dali had worked together, creating surrealist ideas for her line of clothing. That was sort of in the early 30s, and it progressed and progressed. And by the time she was making clothes still in the 60s, she was using black and white gloves, but like hands all down the dress. So I was pulling apart like that. And then Martin Margiela used all these gloves to make all these fantastic corsets in about 2001. And then there was a designer called Louise Black who had done a black and white glove corset. So I had lots of inspiration to pull from. And then Diane von Furstenberg also did black and white gloves. And so it was sort of a theme that just went into it. And I was in the markets in Berlin. I came back to Berlin for a weekend, and I decided to go to the flea market, and I found an old suitcase full of black and white gloves, and they were real period. I know, right? They were period gloves. They were all tiny weeny little gloves, like no contemporary hand could fit into them because people were much smaller back then. So this woman was like, she goes, oh, you can have the lot for 23 euros. So I bought all of those gloves.
Oh my God.
For 23 euros. Yeah.
If Kismet then was like, well, you have to do it.
Exactly.
Oh,
and the shoe hats, Schiaparelli had made a very famous shoe hat, which of course is in a museum now as well. And so I wanted to recreate that hat as the couture piece that she was wearing. And so I had a fabulous person. She sculpted it out of clay, and then we molded it and made it out actually of paper mache in the end, and painted it and put the veil on it, and then a little snail on the top. And yeah, it was such fun. Many weekends of my time was spent by myself in the studio working on them as well. Because you just don't have time when you're shooting to do all that by hand, and it was really a labor of love.
Yeah, you can sort of tell. I mean, to me, it just felt like everybody was so excited to wear like what they were wearing. Like the characters were excited to be like, this is what I am presenting for this wonderful party. You can tell the actors love it too, though. So I was that scene is very invigorating, I think, for the audience. I did not realize we've been talking for half an hour already, so I guess I will I have one last question for you, and I feel like this has to be really hard because there's so much in Transatlantic. I want to know, from your own designs of this show, what would you take for your own closet? I have to say, I would like the following. I would like the hotel uniforms. That maroon and blue is gorgeous. But I think the things that I most want are from Thomas's outfits, or from his, like he wears a yellow vest when putting the lipstick on. I love that. But also sort of what we were talking about, the more opulent things that he wears like a robe when he wakes up Mary Jane in one scene.
Yes.
Oh, I fell in love with that. So
that's a beautiful robe, isn't it?
That's gorgeous. I would traipse around my garden in that, just doing nothing. So I want to know what you would take for yourself.
I really loved Margot's wardrobe. I thought that was really.
Oh my God, yeah. All right, go ahead.
I love it. Thank you. I love that you're so passionate. She's I'm quite a tall person, and she's quite tall as well. And it was really lovely to work with her, and just to make her look so, I mean, she's a beautiful, beautiful woman,
Hmm.
regardless. But to really kind of put that power structure on her and have her have all the furs. And I based her character on Josephine Baker, who was a
Hmm.
spy during
Yeah.
that time, as well as being a singer and a celebrity and an amazing dancer. But I looked at a lot of Josephine Baker's costumes, and that's what I sort of recreated, that mood for Margot. And I
Hmm.
think, you know, if I was going to wear something, I'd probably want to wear those clothes. Although I did love the sequin dress that I built for Mary Jane Gold's character when she
The
has,
one shoulder, that one.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's so pretty.
Yeah, so that was
That,
beautiful, and that was made out of sequins, and it was all cut on the bias, and I
mm,
wanted the sunset to kind of reflect and sparkle off her.
yeah. Yeah, she looks beautiful in that. The thing that I loved about Margot is that every time I saw her, she looked so complete. Where like there's something about like, you know, maybe she just has one bracelet on, or maybe there was like one scene where she has like a gold dangly thing like right here. I don't even know what it is, but it's just, you know, the hat or the fascinator is just perfect. So she's there's a lot of cleanness with her designs that I
Yeah.
loved. Yeah.
Well,
Um,
I mean, that's interesting that you noticed the fascinators. Because she has got quite a lot of thick afro hair, I found the hats didn't really work on her.
mhm.
And so very early on, I was like, okay, I'm going to make it a theme for her, that she will only have fascinators, and they will all be a different bird for
Ah,
every single outfit. And there's an
ah,
amazing feather guy in Paris.
mhm.
And I found basically little tiny dead birds, and we made each one a different color. I know it's awful, isn't it? But that's what they did then as well. They
Yeah.
you know, there was a lot of fur, there was a lot of birds, there was a lot of opulence.
Mhm.
So I made a different color fascinator for every one of her outfits.
Great. Oh, go back to
Yeah.
other stuff now. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, and your generosity. I was just gobsmacked by everything in here. Like you did not take any moment for granted in this show, and I think it's the whole. I mean, it's just so beautifully crafted. So, thank you for letting me gush at you for a half an hour about fabrics and
Thank you.
colors. It's like,
Thank you for gushing at me. You can do it anytime. I love
sure.
it.
Feeling down, just hit me up. That's what I do. Okay. Well, have a good rest of your day. Thank you so much for your time, and good luck to you this season. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Sure.
Bye bye.
Bye.